Yassas, my friends, and welcome to the city center of Rethymno, the third largest city here on the island of Crete. It's a beautiful destination, a beach destination, a tourist location, but it's also a place rich with history from the Venetians to the Ottomans to the Greeks, and even further back than that. It's a city with a lot of character, and it's a place that I cannot wait to explore with you. So come along, guys, let's check out this beautiful Greek island. Let's do it. So to start this Rethymno video out, I'm taking you to a little typical Greek spot for some typical cheap Greek eats. So the first thing I've got here is dakos. Dakos is kind of like a bread salad. They have a layer of kind of brown bread, and then it kind of takes a bruschetta kind of idea. Got some chopped tomatoes, some onions, some olive oil, and then on the top, feta cheese and one tasty olive. Let's give it a try. Bread, cheese, tomatoes. Seems good, let's give it a try. The bread is really crunchy, but the inside, because they put the tomatoes on there, it gets kind of like nice and juicy, so you got a lot of texture going on. And then the cheese, a little salty, very nice. Love the dakos. Secondarily, any delicious Greek style lunch has to have a gyro sandwich. It could be gyro, it could be gyro, it could be gyro. We don't know. If you're a Greek person, let me know how you say it below. So here in Greece, they give you the meat that goes on the donor machine, you know, the spinning meat. They shave it off. Then you've got some tasty fries, then some different vegetables and tzatziki. So the only way to do this is just straight to the face. Pretty much one of the best street foods ever made in my book. Just like a full meal, which is what I love about the gyros, the doner, whatever you call it, wherever you get it. When you shave meat, put it into a pita, you're gonna have a good time. This was only €2.80. So in general, here in Crete, pretty cheap, you get pretty good food. And Rethymno, the city that we're in, has a lot of food options. So we will head to the city center now and explore this ancient Venetian city. Okay, very full, very ready to explore the city and tell you a little bit about this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little city here in Crete. So, I'm in a city called Rethymno. If you can't read Greek letters, it's actually very similar to Russian Cyrillic. So if you can read Cyrillic, you're halfway there, and then you just have to fill in the blanks. So this one is a theta, and this is a th, so Rethymno. This city goes back a long, long, long time. So in our last video, went to Knossos, the first European settlement basically anywhere throughout history. And so this was a very important city in the region at a similar time. So important, in fact, they used to even mint their own coins and had their own kind of financial sector here. The story of the city really goes to the Venetian Empire. The Venetian Empire, the Venetian kind of maritime state, as it's also known, was this kind of centralized government in Venice that conquered and took over a lot of small seaports around Europe. So here in Crete, along the Adriatic coast in Dubrovnik, and they built a lot of places that were centered mostly around trade. They started trading salt, and then they moved on to other maritime activities. They call this a thalassocracy. A thalassocracy is a sea-based or maritime-based empire. So this city here, this beautiful city of Rethymno, has a beautiful old town that was basically built in the 1600s, 1500s in a very beautiful Venetian way. So we'll head in there now. But the story does not end here with Rethymno. It also was part of the Ottoman Empire for almost 300 years. So here in the city center of Rethymno, you can find beautiful, beautiful Ottoman architecture. You can find mosques, you can find old school Ottoman houses, and here, for example, which is now the Museum of Paleontology, I believe, is an old example of an Ottoman mosque with the domes, with the minaret, and all that good stuff. The Ottomans were here for 300 years, but they were never welcomed in the long term. So while the Venetian stuff is really well taken care of and people are very proud of it here in the Greek culture, the Ottoman times, not so much. So they've taken a lot of the mosques and the remnants of the Ottoman Empire, turned them into museums, turned them into different things, because the Turks and the Greeks have a lot of beef that goes way, way back. So now we're gonna head to the city center and we are going to check out the old city. Now we're getting into the old town, and you can notice that the streets are very narrow. They have these very small paths, so you can drive motorbikes on each side. And then, but you can see the distance from one balcony to the other side. Very, very, very small. So here is a map of the old city center of Rethymno. Here you have the massive fortress, which we'll see in a couple minutes here. And this is the old town. This is the new town, but you can still find kind of older buildings because people have been living in this region for a very, very long time. And this is a very famous place here. This is the Kara Musa Mosque. And so what the Ottomans did in a lot of places where they, took over or where they kind of colonized, they would take old churches. So this was a Franciscan church, and then they turned it into a mosque with the very Ottoman style. So the building itself, technically was a church for maybe, quite a while, a couple hundred years, and then of course they turned it into a mosque, and now it's been turned into a museum. So you get this kind of like different lifestyle, different phases of the buildings here in Crete, and it goes back quite a ways. Over here on the far side of the mosque, they have the old Ottoman gravestones, the headstones, and the very, very traditional script where they have where Turkish used to be written in the Arabic script, and then the tops, the very typical dome tops, and over here they even have the top that reminds me of small turbans. While this is a really historic place and there's been lots of changes, you can look at the sea here and you can imagine various empires, whether it was Ottomans, Venetians, Greeks, mainland Greeks, and all the people in between coming, their boats stopping here on this port. You can even see an old Venetian lighthouse in the distance there. This is also a very modern place, and now the entire economy here is basically tourists. There are more German people here than in Germany. I swear to God, I'm hearing more German than I'm hearing Greek, and there's also lots and lots of French tourists. So basically now it's kind of a resort town. They have the cute little old town, they have the beautiful hills, so you can take the excursions over here. They got the palm trees, the good weather, and yeah, there's a reason people like to come here. But for me, and what we care about on Tales from the Road, is the stories from the people, the stories from the ancient parts, and the things of how it all connects together. So let's go take a look at this lighthouse over here. So one of the coolest parts about Crete for me, I guess, is the presence of the Venetians. So the Venetians, based in Venice, they had an empire for like almost over 1,000 years, and it was a dogecies is what they call it. So it was run by a doge who is both kind of like a prince and also like a religious figure. And where the Venetians went, they also spread Catholicism, specifically Christianity. So this is an important trading point. The Venetians were in Herakleion to the east and Chania to the west, and they needed another intermediate port, which is why they built the port and here the lighthouse in Rethymno. The Venetians are interesting because it was purely trade-based economy and purely trade-based society. There wasn't much land, but they owned a lot of wealth and they owned a lot of influence around the southern Mediterranean. And the cool part, what I think about, is when I think of Italy in today's context, we always think of it as this lumped together kind of civilization. But the Venetians spoke Venetian, which is a specific dialect of the Italian language, which people in Venice and that are surrounding areas still speak. And the history is very different and very, it has a long-lasting effect, differently than the history of, for example, Florence or Turin or Milan or Rome. There were really independent states for a very, very long time, basically the majority of history. So this idea of modern-day Italy is actually quite new. And then you end up with beautiful things like this in your modern-day Greek city, where it was controlled by a people thousands and thousands of miles away from here. The old town is in this direction, but first I want to point you to the Venetian loggia, which is an old building built in the 16th century that was basically a notable meeting place for notable fancy Venetians and Greek people alike. After the Ottomans captured this area, they turned it into a mosque. And since then, it's been turned into the Ministry of Culture Archaeological Receipts Fund, where you can see recreations of classic Greek architecture that you can find in their Museum of Archaeology here. So walking through the old town now, you'll find it very, very touristy. Pretty much nobody here is Greek, except the people working, of course, which is fine. And they've kept the buildings in really nice condition, and they have all the really nice, you know, tourist shops. Maybe you want a little bag or something, maybe you want something Greek. There's endless gelato, endless places to eat. But the way that the city center is built is still very much intact, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place if you want to spend a couple days walking around a nice little Greek city. This style, where the wooden part pops off the building that you can see here and here, is the Ottoman style of building. So these buildings have been updated since the Venetian times, obviously, with an Ottoman style. And then the rest are kind of in the more traditional Greek island style that they have here. And it's a really big mishmash of different things here. Bars, cafes, restaurants. All the restaurants sell the same thing. Not a big fan of tourist places, as you guys know, but this one's really nice. And I've been staying here for almost 7 days, and really good food, really, really, really nice people. The Greek people here in this city are just phenomenal. And it doesn't feel too terribly touristy. If you can get over all of the English and all of the other stuff like that, I think it's a fine place to come. And it's especially if you're a resort kind of tourist person, definitely the place for you. The last place on our journey is this central square here in Rethymno. We've got an old school with a museum, a basketball court. They've set up a stage for some sort of performance or production that they're doing called the 2020 Rethymno. Maybe it has something to do with a marathon. And here is the basically city center cathedral mosque, which is the largest mosque here in Rethymno. One of the most beautiful ones. And here you can see this really beautiful old Ottoman style minaret. It is no longer a mosque, as with all the mosques, as I've said, in the city. They've been converted into different things. I believe the inside of that is a museum. And then other than that, we've just got nice little places to eat, to drink. And that's Rethymno in a nutshell. It's just a nice place to spend time, to be in the sun, to enjoy a place with your friends and family. And goddamn, why can't you enjoy that? With the sun setting, I'm now standing in the old Venetian fortress, overlooking the beautiful sea. I don't know if you guys can see it so well, but very, very different layers of history. So this is quite old. This is a little agora they've got going on here. Got a gunpowder warehouse. We've got a nice little building overlooking the ocean. And one of the coolest parts about this place is when the Ottomans took over the Venetian fortress, the first thing they did was establish a mosque. This is the Ibrahim Khan Mosque, named after the rising sultan at the time. And this was in 1657. And so this mosque was put here. There was a big minaret. So when you came to Rethymno in that time, you would basically see the towering presence of the Ottoman Empire. And that was exactly why they put this here, right in the center of the fortress. Down here you have a church. And the interesting thing is that the Greek government decided that once they, reclaim this land, they turned this mosque into a exhibition hall. So all the mosques in this city are defunct. They're no longer mosques. They're all different museums or exhibition halls or, storage facilities. And it's very similar to what the Soviets did in Russia with mosques and churches during the, period from the 1917 to the 2000s. And it's the same idea here. Of course, all the churches are still active and still working, but mosques, no more. And here from the center of this ancient fortress, you can see how important this would have been for the people at that time, with a basically 360 view of the northern Mediterranean here. Very, very impressive. You can find fortresses in pretty much every Cretan city, whether you're in Heraklion, whether you're in Chania. And then if you go to the south, you'll also find a few fortresses, as this island was incredibly important at managing and monitoring trade activities from the north of Africa, what they're calling the Libyan Sea, and then this North Mediterranean Aegean Sea. So Crete is like a pretty big island in the region, and this was really strategically important, which is why so many people fought over this land so many times. So standing here from the city center, I want to say thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got a little glimpse of what life is like here in a very historic but very small little tourist town here in the island of Crete. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, always helpful. And we're gonna bring you more amazing travel stories from Greece. We're getting really out there. We're gonna go to the southern part of Greece, to places where a lot of people don't go. But for now, we're touristing it up on Crete. We got one more video coming from here, and we've got a lot more coming. So see you on the next video, guys. Yamas.